It's Radio Free 501c, the podcast of Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sapp, and we're so excited to be back for Season 6 and continue bringing you outstanding ideas and thought leaders and different ways of thinking. So don't forget to subscribe because you're not going to want to miss any of it. This week, I'm excited to welcome back returning guest Carl Weaver, CAE. He's also my publisher from Broken Column Press. We're here to talk about Boost Your Brand, Write a Book. It is December 9th, 2024. Welcome to episode 266. Hey everybody, it's Monday, December 9th, and that means it's time for another episode of Radio Free 501c, brought to you by Rogue Tulips Consulting. I'm your host, Cecilia Sapp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips Consulting, and I'm also a CAE and an ACNP. Thank you for joining us this week. I'm really excited because I love using the phrase, my publisher is on the phone, or I have a meeting with my publisher. Well, my publisher is actually my guest this week, Carl Weaver, and he is here to talk with us about building our brand by writing a book. But before we dive into the topic and have Carl introduce himself, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to our global audience. And thanks again to everyone for joining us. So, Carl, you're back. You've been on before, returning guest. Would you like to say hello to the audience and tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Cecilia. I'm always glad to be on. Today, we're exclusively talking about Planet of the Apes, I think, like last time.
That was a great book, by the way.
Yeah. So my name is Carl Weaver. I'm the president of Broken Column Press, which is an independent book publishing company located in the D.C. area in beautiful Alexandria, Virginia. And, excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I always love talking with you, and sometimes our conversations go on like for hours. So we'll try to be a little more focused today. Although now I'm thinking I need to have you back to discuss how is association management like Planet of the Apes?
Oh my gosh, how isn't it?
How isn't it? Exactly. All right, that's on the books for 2025. So as Steve McGarrett said, be there, aloha. So. Well, as some of you may know, because as I often introduce Carl as my publisher, and will sometimes say to people on a meeting, well, I have to go, I need to take this call from my publisher, because I'm very excited to have published a book with Carl's help and assistance through his company, Broken Column Press. And if you haven't heard about my book, it's called Association Chapter Systems from Frustrating to Fruitful. Now, you might say, well, I don't do chapters. Well, it's really not just about chapters. It's also about governance, relationship management, and new thinking for the future of associations. And the reason I was able to tie all these things together is because of Carl's guidance. Now, Carl, I know there are so many things we could discuss about books and book publishing and why should you print a book? One of the things you shared with me is that it helps boost your image. Could you expand on that?
Sure. Yeah, it's one way that you can set yourself apart from. I know we in the nonprofit and association world, we don't like to talk about competition, but let's face it, there's only so much money to go around, so many positions. It's one way to set yourself apart from everyone else who maybe is trying to compete for either business or compete for that next job, whatever it is. So if you have your book or your name rather on a book, or maybe even as a chapter author or something like that in someone else's book, it raises your image a little bit because the next person in line doesn't have that. So it's like having, I don't want to equate it to having a certification, for example, like CAE, but it sort of acts, I think, in the same way. It establishes you as an expert in your field. And, people who are giving away, I don't want to say giving away, but people who are signing roles and giving away money and stuff like that want to know that they're giving it to the right people. So that's one way that you can boost your image with by writing a book.
Well, and I think those are all really good points, because something you and I spoke about as we were getting ready for this episode was how hard it can be if you're kind of a generalist in association management like myself. And I know a lot of other people who are too. I've done chapter relations, I've done board relations, I've been a chief staff executive, I've been a director of membership, I've been a director of chapter relations. I even, on the submitting a chapter idea that you mentioned, I did submit a chapter to the 2012 Component Relations Handbook that ASAE did all those years ago. But how do you narrow down your expertise? And so I know your advice is write this book about this area of expertise.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, it's one thing to say I'm an expert in component relations or chapter relations, however you phrase it. But it's another thing to say, oh, someone else believed in me and recognized my expertise and wanted to be my partner in this aspect of my business. And I think that's a lot of where I come in. I of course knew you as an entity long before we were ever on in the pandemic and on the same video calls. But I think having someone, and it's not just me, obviously, you've had many business partners and business relationships. You can say, oh, I've done this work with Michael Butera, or I'm in this agreement with Barbara Armentrout or whoever. But this is something very tangible. People can pick it up. They can order it online. They can go order it at their local bookstore if those things still exist.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. I know. It's like, I think one of the strangest things I saw was an Amazon bookstore, like physical bookstore in Bethesda, Maryland. I was like, what? Like, but when you think how the company started, Jeff Bezos used to drive around with the books in the trunk of his car and deliver them to people. So I guess everything comes back around.
Oh, yeah.
He could do that in the DC area since he owns several houses here that he never uses. But
I can only imagine he drives his own books from one house to the next.
I know. It's like, what are you doing? I know, but a lot of people don't know that about him. Like they think of Amazon today and it's this huge behemoth and expanding in so many other areas. And it's like, yeah, well, the guy just used to drive around in whatever kind of car he had, a Chevy or whatever, and give the books to the people who ordered them. So, and then all of a sudden, boom, he hit that arc that some businesses do. So, but I think, in the book world, I know a lot of people, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this. A lot of people seem to think that people don't read books anymore, but that just can't be the case because Amazon sells so many books that people, and you can get them in the audio version or a digital version or a hard copy. I'm always seeing people reading books or talking about the books they're reading or listening to. So obviously there's still market out there for books.
So I was I don't know if I told you the story before, but I was at the bank, this is a few years ago, and I was sitting at the person's desk. It wasn't like a simple deposit a check type thing. And she's putting in on her computer all my information. She says, Broken Column Press, what's that? I said, it's a book publishing company. And she says, oh, do people still read books? I said, I don't know. I just know they buy the books. So, that's the thing I can track. I can only assume people, I follow other authors and I follow a lot of avid readers online who say, I love this book, or they promote other people's books because they enjoy them so much. So I know there's a market out there for books. I know there are people reading them. But tying those two things together is a difficult part.
That's right.
Getting the right people to be interested in your book. But yeah, there are readers out there still.
Well, or at least listeners. Now, I never thought I would like audiobooks, but I have gotten so into Audible. I listen to books like all the time. And what I like about it is I can download them and I'll be honest, a lot of times I use them to help calm my mind so I can go to sleep. So I listen to them with my earphones and I usually sleep through like huge portions of the book and I wake up and it'll be like chapter 57. I'm like, what? I just started this book. But I do love listening to them because it's an easy thing to do when you're doing something else. So it's like one of my favorite authors is Daniel Pink. And since I don't have a lot of time to read, I love to listen to Daniel Pink books while I'm doing something else. So like my favorite Daniel Pink book so far is When, about timing. And so I think that, things like that, being able to listen to a favorite author, and sometimes they read the books themselves, which is really nice, which I really enjoy that. Especially if they have like a British accent. That always makes it more interesting.
That doesn't hurt, right?
I don't know. Pardon?
Yeah. So that doesn't hurt.
No, it doesn't. It does not hurt at all. So I don't know, but what do you think? Like, so let's say somebody comes to you and they want to write a new book, and they haven't written one before, which was kind of my situation. But I am an avid writer. I love to write. I've been writing since I was a kid, but it's all been short form writing. So what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's really doesn't write a lot? Maybe they write for their job, but they don't write a lot. And they say, well, I think I have a book in me. Like, what kind of advice would you give them to get them started?
I would, so it's almost like your standard consulting questions, like the 5 why analysis and stuff like that. Like, hey, it's great you want to write a book. Well, why do you want to write a book? What's it about? Let's talk about the very basics. I've had some people tell me, oh, I want to write a book. What's your book about? I don't know. I'm like, well, it's great you want to write a book. Maybe you need an idea first. Yeah. And just helping people. I mean, that's like basic stuff, like basic project management, right? Like there's not even a project yet. And already I'm helping you by telling you you need a topic. And that advice is free, by the way. I don't even bill for that. But that's a lot of what I hear. I want to write a book. What's it about? I don't know. Okay, let's back up and try to come up with a topic. Is it a professional thing? Whatever. But so someone has an idea or a topic they want to write about. Okay, we're on to something now. That's like the building the foundation of a house, right? Okay, we've got the foundation. Now we can build all the floors and all the rooms and all the garage and stuff. So what I tell them is let's make an outline. So like, don't worry about the way that we were taught to make outlines in 4th grade or something like that. This is just a list of topics. So I want to write about, I want to include in my book about chapter relations, something about the Mongols and I can't remember the other group.
The Comanche.
Comanche, right.
The Comanche.
Yeah, which I think is a fascinating part of the book. But so you have all these points you want to make, and don't worry about the order. Just get it down on paper, get it down on your note-taking app, whatever it is, and then start structuring it. Once you have your topics, you can more easily structure something. And as you structure things, more ideas will come out. So that's before even writing. Like, have an idea what you're going to write about. If you are writing, if you're at the point, okay, I've got my outline, I've got my structure more or less. Remember that you need to set time aside to write, which means having almost a contract with your family, right? And your current job. And maybe the one with the contract with your current job about finding time to write is you're going to do it off hours because it's your project and not theirs. But just having that idea, okay, I'm not going to write at work because I can't, but I need to talk to my wife or husband or, whatever, your family members that you interact with all the time and your friends who stop by. Say, I need every day from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. free just to do my writing. Make it a sacred thing. So we've talked about it a lot so far, and we haven't even put pen to paper. Or started typing, I guess, is how I do most of mine now.
Yeah. Or I'll admit, while I was finishing the book, I did do a lot of dictation, just because I can't type as fast as I think. And I can almost talk as fast as I think, but that was, that's a good way to capture your ideas as dictate it. I still have tons of pens and paper around, and I'm always jotting things down on pen and paper, capturing ideas. And I made my initial outline on paper and then I typed it. That's my process. Everybody has their own. And then as I was making sure I had covered all the topics I wanted to cover, I was constantly redoing my list of topics. So I had an outline and I was, that doesn't go there. Let me move it. And I'm missing I need a connector here. So that organization of the thoughts and the content is really important. And it's something that we might all do at work as well. We're getting ready to do a presentation, or like I have an education program. So I'm always organizing the content for the education because I try to keep it fresh. How are we going to do it this time? What are we going to add? So you're going to apply a lot of what you do at work anyway to a writing project. And, and I'm just going to say this, that not everyone's a good writer.
Mhm.
You might have good ideas, but you're not a good writer. So don't be afraid to get an editor.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And be willing to, to be wrong with some of the stuff that maybe you're uncomfortable with, like punctuation or, I've seen lots of run on sentences and stuff like that. Um, you know, get it out, get it down on paper, get it on the computer, or however you do it. And don't think that writing is a linear thing either. So it's not like you're going to write, you're going to start at the beginning and you're going to write until you get to the end. I'm sure you found this that because you had structured all your work ahead of time, or a lot of it, that you could say, I don't know where to go on this section anymore, but I know there's more left. Well, I also need to write about this other thing. I could just write on that,
Mm-hmm.
in your 2 hours a day or whatever, however you did it. But that's what I tell people is that, don't worry about starting at the beginning, start where you start. And don't, something I talk to a lot of writers about is don't wait for the muse to alight at the tip of your pen. It's hard work. It's not going to flow freely a lot of times. You just have to make the time and do it, even if you suck at it at first.
That's
But,
right. Well, you know what? I think, I have done this thing that a lot of writers do. You write something and you finish it and you think it's so horrible, you just burn it,
mm,
crumple it up, throw it in the trash can. It's like, oh my God, it was so horrible, but writers are our own worst critic, I think. Right.
mm,
But yeah, you do. Everybody has their own way of doing it. And, Carl, what you said about you don't start on page one and go all the way to the end. You start where you start. And one of my favorite writing stories is about Frank Herbert, the author of the Dune series. And he's one of
mm,
my favorite authors. And he's written other things. He wrote other things. He passed away years ago, but he wrote other things too. But the Dune Chronicle is what he's best known for. And that original trilogy, Dune, Dune Messiah, and Children of Dune, he said in an article that he wrote Dune Messiah and Children of Dune first.
mm.
And then he wrote the first book. So here you have a professional author, a very successful author, writing this very insightful study, basically, of human relationships and societies and how we create hierarchies and control information. Is very relevant to today's world. I think it's relevant to every day, no matter what era you're in. I mean, it's very thoughtful, thought-provoking book, which is why I'll admit I've read Dune 12 times because it's just so interesting and so deep. It's really deep, very layered. So you always pull something new out of it. But the point of that story being, he didn't start at the beginning. He actually started at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Thought it would just be 3 books. And then he's like, well, I could write more. I could write more. But his son should stop. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Well, that's just my opinion. But some things are just done when they're done. So,
Yeah.
but that's the thing about the writing. Like you and I have talked many times about that sacred time of writing, and it really is a very sacred activity, in my opinion, as well, because you're taking thought and putting them into words, and words have power because words create ideas, and ideas create action. So it is a sacred thing because you're kind of like pulling that energy out of the universe or whatever you think of it, however you call it, and then you're creating something that people can actually touch or listen to. They can download it. A download's a file, so that's a thing. So people can do that. And I think that if you do want to write a book, work with somebody like Carl, because, my favorite story about when I started working with Carl, because like Carl said, we knew each other for a while. And then I started talking about, well, maybe I do want to write that book finally. And I said to Carl, I've heard it takes 3 to 4 years to get a book published. How long does it take your company? And your response was, how fast can you write? And I'm like, this is who I want to work with because that's how I think and how I work. So do you really think that it does in this era? And we're not really talking self-publishing here, even though you do publish through the Amazon publishing arm. Broken Column Press is a real company. It's not self-publishing. You do a lot of marketing. You do a lot of editing. You do a lot of writer support. So do you really think that it does need to take 3 or 4 years to get a book out?
Well, I don't know what all's encompassed in that. So I would assume that that's for John Grisham, because John
Mhm.
Grisham is going to get another $10 million check from whomever, and he's going to write a book. It's going to be 2 words in the title, because that's what he does, like the firm, the practice, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
and and then he's going to give it to them. They'll have their editing process, and it's sort of a mechanical thing. So from that,
Mhm.
I could see 3 or 4 years. But if you have a more or less ready manuscript, there's no reason it should take anywhere near that long.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not Random House or Houghton Mifflin or Penguin or something like that. I'm just Carl, and I've got, I'll come have coffee with you, and we'll talk about great movies and stuff. But I can afford to have that personal contact. If you're running the giant machinery of book publishing like some of these other companies, they don't have time for that. They're working on like 10 dozen different things, every person. And it's just money making machine. Whereas I'm just here in Alexandria, Virginia, and just a guy in an apartment. So,
You
yeah.
know? Well, I don't know if I would use the word just in relation to you or anything you do, Carl. So, you're really a Renaissance man in
Yeah.
the true sense of the word. But I think what Broken Column Press represents is that access to share our thoughts and ideas in a
Mm-hmm.
meaningful way without being John Grisham. Because frankly, I don't think everybody wants to be John Grisham. Uh, you look at James Patterson, and he always has co-authors now
Mm-hmm.
because they're churning out so many books, book after book after book. And then there's the Jack Ryan universe that Tom Clancy left behind,
Yeah.
and all these different writers write Jack Ryan books, who seems to be president for life because he's like in book 14, still president of the United States. And his kids are all like getting close to collecting Social Security. But anyway, that's a story hole, guys, just saying. But you have that turning out, and it actually reminds me very much of Alexander Dumas, who wrote The Three Musketeers. Because what a lot of people don't realize is even though it was like 18th century France, that guy was running a book writing factory.
Mm-hmm.
People who wrote for him, he wrote a lot of other books, at least put his name on them, besides the Three Musketeers, had all these people writing books, and he would put his name on it. He paid them to do the writing. They were all like ghost writers. So even back then, people were doing that sort of thing. And so do you want to be that, or do you just want to be, hey, I have this great idea, this great book I want to get out there? I would rather be the Celestine Prophecy, that little book that didn't come out from a big company, but then all of a sudden everybody was talking about it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I would rather be that person than, the John Grishams of the world, because then after a while you have to become formulaic. Whereas I think the opportunity of working with a company like yours is you don't have to be formulaic because you can just write whatever you want. I have a whole list of books I'm going to work on. I'm never at a loss for ideas. It's setting aside the time to make those ideas happen, right? So I have a whole series of ideas set out already. And so I can go from topic to topic. I don't have to follow a formula like John Grisham or James Patterson or Alexander Dumas. I can just, oh, well, this
Mm-hmm.
time I'm going to write a fiction book. I think because that's something you don't focus on one or the other at your company, right?
No, I've got a lot of different topics that we represent. Some of it is just stuff that's in the public domain that I think is interesting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've worked with poets. One of the things I do is I try to set expectations ahead of time with writers. And I had this poet come to me, and we're talking about his book and his work and stuff. And poetry is often a very intimate, expressive, personal thing, right? And so I said, I want to read it. I'm going to send you some edits. I said, it's your work. You take my edits, you don't take my edits. I want to work with you, but I may have some suggestions. And he said, okay. And so we're working out the terms of our agreement. And he says, I have to stop you. He says, this all looks good, but I want to reserve movie rights for my book. I'm like, yeah, you can have the movie rights. I don't want to. I don't do movies. So, yeah, I suppose I could, but like, I don't think there's a market for poetry movies, really. You know, except for like the Canterbury Tales or something. Yeah,
That's pretty funny. I mean, I can see that as like an experimental film.
sure. I mean, yeah, you can do it, and that's not my thing. You know, and the same guy thought, well, maybe because he's publishing a book, he's going to become a millionaire, you know, in a couple of years. I said, so I sort of had to right size his expectations, and you know, because I don't want anyone to come into a business agreement with me or business relationship and think Carl's going to make me a millionaire overnight.
Hmm.
You know, I'd love to, you know, because then John Grisham would be knocking at my door and wanting to publish with me. I'd sell his next multi-million-dollar book or something.
Right. That's really funny. And then that I would arm wrestle over the movie rights. So, John Grisham.
Yeah.
Because books make good movies.
Oh yeah, exactly. You know, so you know, that's a big thing that I do is, you know, talking to authors, you know, try to set their expectation, give them some direction. Um, you know, for some people need a little project management, like a check-in and stuff like that. Um, you know, but beyond that, I try to help people achieve their dreams, and that's I think that's the best job in the world.
Oh, I love that. That is a great way to look at it.
Hmm.
Do like somebody like me who's always been a writer, who was a little kid who used to make books. I used to make my own books when I was a little kid, and I draw the pictures and I make a binding with masking tape, and I have all
Oh
these
yeah.
old books. So, to me, to be able to go on Amazon.com and type in the name of my book and it pops up, that's very exciting for me. And I'm like, okay, I've done this thing I've always wanted to do. And now I know I can keep doing it because I've
Mm.
already done, but I've done it and it's great. Also, if you go on Amazon, if you type in Radio Free 501c, it will pop up on the podcast list.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, for me, it's like, wow, if you type these things in, they pop up and it's my name on it. So it's like very cool. This is why, Carl, I always tell people I am going to be famous in the future. Because 100 years from now, some digital archaeologist is going to come along and dig through all these digital caches and see my name popping up, like with all these things. And they're going to be like, who the heck is this person? Next thing you know, they'll be like writing a book about me. Like, who is this person? And why did she say all this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
What is association management? Right. So, but I don't know, maybe, I'm thinking about my book, Association Chapter Systems from Frustrating to Fruitful. And I'm wondering, like, would that be a murder mystery or a drama or a comedy? I don't know.
So it could be a little of each, I guess.
Yeah, a dramedy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, that's been great. Well, I always love talking with you, and you're definitely coming back to talk about how our associations like Planet of the Apes. There's a lot to dig in there, I'm telling you.
Yeah. I mean,
Maybe we'll co-author that book.
yeah, we'll get. I suppose Pierre Boulle, the original author of that book, is passed away by now, but yeah, we'll get in touch, make sure we don't cross any legal lines.
That's right. Well, I don't know how long he's been dead. We'll have to check that. But I think as long as we give him credit, we're okay.
Oh yeah.
No, but then again, Hollywood hijacked that whole story. So, he only wrote the one book, and now we're on like the third or fourth movie in the new movie series. So,
Yeah.
it seems fair game to me, but we'll check the Fair Use Act. But anyway,
You can't copyright or trademark an idea.
mm-hmm.
So, like the idea of Planet of the Apes, you can talk about that and write about it, but you can't, copy his stuff. So I feel confident we can do it.
Great. Well, we're going to do it. We're booking that right after we're done here. So, well, Carl, this has been great. I always have fun talking with you. And as a person who's published a book with you through Broken Column Press, I just want everyone else out there who's thinking about writing a book, no matter how long it is, like my book's what would be considered a shorter book because it's about 22,000 words. You know, the average novel is about 40,000 words. So don't think your book has to be 5,000 pages long. Your book can be 100 pages or 200 or 150. It does not have to be a huge book. You know, write from your heart, write what you think, and just share your ideas with the rest of the world. So, Carl, you know, I always like to ask my guests, what's your closing thought that you'd like the audience to take away today? And how can they get in touch with you if they want to talk with you about writing a book?
So they can get in touch with me by emailing me at cweaver@brokencolumnpress.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn if you search for Carl Weaver, Broken Column Press. I pop up pretty easily. Those are the best ways to get in touch with me. My big thought of it for this is that it's writing a book is a big undertaking, but it's a possible one. You know, and it's like a lot of other things in life. The first time you do it is the hardest. But it's not impossible. And you know, there are people here. You know, I can help you. I'm sure Cecilia, you could help people do it. But you know, most people need a little bit of guidance and like, how do I start and what do I do next and how does this work? You know, what are the steps? But all that stuff's possible for most people. So you know, let me know how I can help you or if I can refer you to someone else or whatever. But like I said, I'm in the business of helping people achieve their dreams. And so I want to see everybody's dream of book publishing come true.
Oh, I love that. That is a great job.
That's why I smile all the time.
You do smile all the time. Well, this has been another great conversation with Carl Weaver of Broken Column Press. And again, I can personally attest to working with Carl. It's a great experience. So reach out and have a coffee or a lunch with him. He's fun to talk to about a lot of different things. So, we're going to wrap up this episode before Carl and I start talking about Planet of the Apes too in depth. We have to go rogue for now, but we'll be back next time with another exciting episode. So if you haven't subscribed or followed us yet on your favorite podcast service, please do take a moment and do that. Or you can always find our podcast on our website at roguetulips.com. If you visit the website, you can learn about what kind of things we do to help associations think outside the box and bloom outside the box. So let's have a conversation and see if we can work together. If you are looking for CAE education, whether you're renewing or you're getting ready to take the exam, check out our education page at our website. We're planning our spring session for the May 2025 exam. So check out what we have going on. So thanks again for joining us, everyone. And on behalf of Carl and myself, we will see you next time.